There are moments in life that stretch the soul, moments when someone walks into your world, ignites your spirit, mirrors your essence, and then, just as suddenly, vanishes from your life. It feels cruel, almost cosmic in its irony. You ask yourself, why would the universe allow such a connection only to take it away? Why send someone I can't stay with? This question isn't just about romance. It's about human connection, destiny, and the mysterious choreography of life that always seems to dance one step ahead of our understanding. There is meaning in this heartbreak, there is truth hidden in the timing, and beneath the pain there is purpose. We are not merely spectators of fate, we are its participants, shaped not by what stays, but by what leaves too soon. Let us explore 5 truths that reveal why such people appear in our lives, and why they are sometimes not meant to stay. There are encounters in life that shake us from our slumber, not with violence, but with beauty. These meetings are rarely predictable and often come unannounced. You do not anticipate them, nor do you prepare. Yet when they arrive, they awaken something ancient within you, as if a forgotten part of your soul has been gently stirred from a long and silent sleep. These are not mere interactions. They are soul events, sacred ruptures in the continuity of your life. And frequently they come embodied in another person, a figure who does not stay, yet leaves you changed forever. It is in these moments that the psyche undergoes a shift. The self, long buried beneath layers of habit, duty, and silent resignation, begins to tremble. There is movement beneath the still surface. This person, whom you could not keep, arrives like a spark on dry wood, and for the first time in perhaps many years, something catches fire. Not the kind of fire that consumes, but the kind that reveals light, that shows you the furniture of your inner home you had long stopped seeing. Imagine the life you've been living as a house, well kept, orderly, but dim. You know every hallway, every corner. You move through it by muscle memory. But then someone steps in and opens a window that had been painted shut for years. Suddenly light streams in. You see dust in the air, yes, but you also see color, shape, beauty. You realize you had forgotten how much more there was to feel, to notice, to live. And perhaps it is not even what they say that wakes you. It's what they are, their energy, their way of seeing you, not as you've been performing, but as you truly are. They do not fall in love with your mask. They fall in love with your rawness, and in doing so, they mirror it back to you. Suddenly, you realize you had become a stranger to yourself, and now, with them beside you, you begin to return home. This awakening can be exhilarating, but it is also terrifying, because once you see yourself, you cannot unsee. Once you have felt the depth of your longing, you cannot pretend you are content with the shallow. You start questioning everything. Why have I lived this way? Why have I silenced this voice? What else have I forgotten? Therein lies the tragedy and the gift, because this person, this catalyst, may not stay. They were never meant to be your forever. Their role was more elemental. They came not to walk the entire journey with you, but to point toward a road you didn't know existed. Think of Maya, a quiet, thoughtful woman whose life was governed by structure. She moved through her days like clockwork, dutiful, efficient, reliable, but inside a quiet ache pulsed, not loud enough to disrupt her routine, but persistent enough to numb her joy. Then came Luca, vibrant, chaotic, alive. An artist who saw the world in metaphors and spoke with his hands as much as his mouth. He did not offer her stability, but he offered her reflection. In his eyes she saw her own capacity for passion. In his laughter she heard the echo of her own buried creativity. He made no promises. He stayed for only 3 months, but when he left, he did not take everything. He left her with herself. A year later, she would say with tears and gratitude, he woke up something I forgot I had. And that awakening led her not into another romance, but into her art, into her voice, into herself. This is not an isolated tale. Across cultures and eras, people have spoken of these mysterious arrivals. Soulmates, twin flames, teachers in disguise. Call them what you will, but their essence remains. They come to show you. And yet, because we live in a world addicted to possession, we often mistake these awakeners as promises of permanence. We want to hold them, keep them, merge with them. But the soul does not operate like the ego. The soul understands cycles. It honors the seasons. Some people are not meant to be harvest. They are meant to be spring. And so, when they leave, the wound they create is real. But it is also sacred. You mourn them, not only because of who they were, but because of what they represented, a glimpse into the life you were too afraid to claim. Their departure feels like betrayal, but it is often initiation. Painful, yes, but necessary, because it forces a choice. Now that you have seen yourself, now that you have tasted aliveness, will you go back to sleep, or will you follow the path they pointed toward, even if it means walking alone for a while? The ancient alchemists believed that transformation required heat, and what greater heat than the fire of longing? The longing for a person, yes, but more deeply the longing for wholeness, for expression. For life, we often speak of heartbreak as a wound, but it is more than that. It is a doorway, and those who break our hearts in this particular way are not destroyers. They are midwives of our becoming. They do not shatter us to harm, they shatter us to free. What you must understand is this: not every love story is meant to be lived out with another person. Some love stories exist to awaken the one between you and your soul. So if you are in the wake of such a loss, do not only grieve. Listen, what did they stir? What did they awaken? What part of you now refuses to go back to sleep? Let that part speak. Let it rise, let it paint. Let it dance, let it rage, let it create, because that is why they came. That is the gift they left behind. That is the version of you that was waiting, dormant, until they arrived. There is a secret that the soul knows, one that the ego resists with all its might. Not all love, no matter how deep or electric, is meant to survive the limitations of time. This truth is not born from cynicism, but from the quiet observation of how life unfolds, how it weaves encounters into the fabric of our destiny, not always to keep them, but often to shape us. The universe, in its great and silent wisdom, does not operate in chaos. What appears to be accidental or cruelly misaligned is often part of a larger rhythm that escapes our immediate comprehension. It is not randomness that separates two souls who have found each other. It is timing, the often invisible gatekeeper of our unfolding. Timing governs more than clocks and calendars. It is a living force, a rhythm that dances with the evolution of the self. Each of us walks a path that winds through growth, trauma, fear, transformation, and finally towards some semblance of wholeness. And if we have not yet arrived at the part of our path where we can receive another soul without projecting our wounds upon them, then even the most profound connection will crack beneath the weight of unhealed pain. Love may be eternal in the soul, but relationships live in the realm of time, and time demands readiness. There is no skipping the inner work. You may meet the one who stirs your entire being, the one whose presence feels like recognition, like home. But if your heart is still clothed in the armor of past betrayals, if your nervous system still flinches at the scent of abandonment, if your voice has not yet remembered how to say what it needs without shame, then love cannot survive the winter of your inner world. This is not a punishment, it is a preparation. The seed is real, the connection is real, but like any living thing, it needs the right season to grow. How often have people mistaken intensity for readiness? How often have they believed that because the soul is lit aflame, The conditions must be right, but intensity is not always a sign of readiness. Sometimes it is the body recognizing something ancient. Sometimes it is your trauma being activated, not your truth being fulfilled. To feel deeply is not the same as to be prepared to build something lasting. Consider a young man named Elias who met Sarah when he was 24. She was calm, grounded, wise beyond her years. He, on the other hand, was full of fire and chaos, still caught in the undertow of his childhood wounds. The moment they met, he felt something he had never felt before, a stillness in his soul. He said she made the world quiet, but he did not yet know how to handle stillness. He confused it with boredom, he picked fights, he disappeared and reappeared, and eventually she left, not because she didn't love him, but because he had not yet learned how to love himself. Years later, after therapy, heartbreak, and time spent alone with his pain, he ran into Sarah again. This time something had changed. The noise inside him had softened. He listened. He asked questions instead of defending himself. And when she smiled, he did not question whether he deserved it. This is not just a story of reunion. It is a story of becoming. It is a story that asks us to stop blaming timing as if it were a thief, and to begin honoring it as a teacher. Scientific research has touched on this quiet truth. A study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships revealed that couples who reconnected after many years apart often had more successful and lasting partnerships than they did in their initial attempts. What had changed, not their compatibility, not their love, but their readiness. Time had done its work. The soil had matured. The winter had passed. And yet we do not like waiting. The human heart, once ignited, wants to grasp, to build, to declare forever, without first ensuring it can offer now. But the universe is not a vending machine for desire. It gives when the giving will serve our growth. It takes away when our clinging would only harm us or the other. So when someone enters your life and leaves too soon, do not only ask, "Why now?" Instead, ask with reverence, "What was incomplete in me? What was unready in them? What soul lesson did our meeting plant like a seed within me, waiting for spring?" This question turns your sorrow into meaning. It shifts your gaze from loss to growth, because the truth is, readiness is not about perfection. It is about willingness. It is about self-awareness. It is about the ability to sit with discomfort, to speak the truth even when it trembles, to love without control. Sometimes two people meet and fall in love, but their fears love louder than their hearts, and so they retreat, they sabotage, they run, not because the connection was false, but because it was too real for their level of development. Real love is not a balm for brokenness, it is a mirror, and when we are not ready to see ourselves, we will shatter the mirror rather than face it. But here is the hope. Time does not abandon us. It waits. It calls us inward. It offers silence instead of noise, solitude instead of distraction. And if we dare to enter that silence, we begin to hear the faint rhythm of our own becoming. What we do with that time is everything. We can numb it, run from it, pretend the connection never mattered, or we can honor it. We can grow. We can prepare, not with the obsession of getting someone back, but with the devotion of becoming who we are meant to be. Then, if destiny is kind, perhaps the universe will bring that soul back to us, and if not, it will bring someone aligned with the person we have become. Because once we are ready, life always meets us where we are. So let us not mourn timing as if it were the enemy. Let us respect it as the silent sculptor of our fate. What is not ready now may bloom later, and what feels like an ending may be only the beginning of the season that brings us fully to ourselves. There is a shadow that clings to the concept of love, a shadow born not from the nature of love itself, but from the ego's need to possess, to define, to hold what is by its very essence unholdable. We are taught, often from our earliest moments, to believe that love is a transaction, a tethering of souls that provides us with a sense of safety, of belonging, of identity. Yet the truth, as revealed through pain, is far more complex. For most of our suffering does not come from love, it comes from attachment, and the universe, in its silent and sometimes devastating wisdom, sends us certain people not to fulfill our fantasies of permanence, but to tear open the illusion that love and possession are the same thing. Love is a movement of the soul. It is an energy that expands, that uplifts, that honors the autonomy of the other. It does not demand, it does not cling, it does not insist upon itself. Love whispers, "I want what's best for you, even if it means I must lose you." But attachment, by contrast, is a grasping of the ego. It fears loss. It fears change. It says, "You are mine. You must not leave. Without you, I am nothing." And therein lies the root of our anguish, not in love's departure, but in the belief that without the other we cease to exist. It is a painful mirror, but an essential one. When someone enters your life and ignites a fire within you, when their presence fills a hollow space in your chest, and suddenly the world feels vibrant and alive, it is easy to believe that they are the missing piece, that now, at last, you are whole. But wholeness built upon another's presence is not wholeness. It is dependency dressed in poetry. You do not love them as they are. You love what they do for your emptiness. And so the universe, which seeks not your comfort but your awakening, allows them to leave. Their departure is not cruelty. It is clarity. It strips away the illusion that you were whole because of them and reveals the truth. You were always longing to feel whole within yourself. The pain you feel in their absence is not the absence of love. It is the presence of your own unhealed self, suddenly laid bare. There is no shame in this. The journey from attachment to love is the journey of becoming human. We all carry within us the child who reached for love and feared abandonment, who learned to cling to what brought pleasure and run from what caused pain. But if we remain in that place, if we continue to confuse attachment for love, we will always suffer when someone walks away. And people will walk away not because they are cruel, but because their presence was never meant to complete you. It was meant to show you where your healing still lies. Consider Layla, who met Jonah during the quietest season of her life. She had lost her job, was distant from her family, and had begun to believe that life would remain dim and empty. And then he appeared, kind, attentive, radiant. In his laughter she found light. In his eyes she saw herself reflected with warmth. She told herself she was in love, but when he began to drift, when his heart grew restless, she panicked, she begged, she shrank, she twisted herself to fit what she believed would make him stay. He left anyway, and in the echo of that absence she found herself on the floor, weeping not just for him, but for the self she had abandoned in her attempt to keep him. It was then, and only then, that she began to see clearly. What she thought was love had been fear. What she mistook for connection had been dependence. And through her grief she began to return to herself, not the self she thought he completed, but the self who was waiting all along to be chosen by her. This is the medicine in the loss. It is not a punishment, but a passage. It teaches you that no one can give you what you refuse to give yourself, that no external presence, no matter how luminous, can replace the work of becoming whole within. When you say, "They completed me," ask instead, what parts of me did I believe were missing, and why did I give someone else the task of filling them? True love is not about finding your missing half. That myth, though romantic in storybooks, is ruinous in life. True love arises when two whole individuals meet, not to complete each other, but to mirror each other's wholeness. It is a dance, not a chain. It flows, it evolves, it does not bind. So when someone you loved leaves and the world seems to collapse, it is not a sign that love has failed. It is a sign that attachment has been broken, and this breaking, though brutal, is a gift. Because in its aftermath you are given a rare opportunity, the invitation to turn inward and ask, "Who am I?" now that they are gone. And if you are willing to sit in that question, without rushing to fill the silence, without reaching for a replacement, you will begin to hear a different voice, a quieter one, the voice of the self that has always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the longing, beneath the ache. This voice does not beg, it does not cling, it does not fear solitude. It whispers, "You are already enough." That is what their departure offers you, a return to the self, a release from the illusion that your worth is tied to someone else's presence. And though it may feel like a death, it is also a rebirth. The ego grieves, but the soul rejoices, because every ending that strips away illusion brings you closer to truth. And the truth is this: love, real love, does not imprison, it liberates. It does not say, "You are mine." It says, "I see you, and I love you enough to let you be." If you can rise from the ashes of your attachment, you will begin to love this way, not only others, but yourself. And in that kind of love there is no fear of loss, because you no longer hold anyone as your savior. You meet them as a companion, and whether they stay or go, your center remains intact. In the end, their leaving taught you something your comfort never could, that the self is not something to be completed by another. It is something to be reclaimed, and from that place of wholeness, love becomes not a need, but a gift. There is a strange and often unbearable beauty in the way the soul grows. Unlike the body, which matures according to predictable stages, the soul deepens through disruption. The universe, though silent, is never passive. It speaks in symbols, in separations, in ruptures of the heart, and its most profound language is pain. Not the surface-level discomfort we brush off or medicate away, but the deeper ache, the one that carves through identity, the one that leaves us breathless with loss, the one that brings us to our knees. Pain, in this deeper sense, is not a mistake. It is a process, a ritual, an alchemy of the inner world. We are conditioned to view suffering as failure, as punishment, or as something to escape as quickly as possible. But to flee pain is to flee the very experience that carries transformation. There is a kind of wisdom that does not enter the mind through books or conversation, but through wounds. The wound is the portal. It is the place where the ego is broken open and the self is revealed. We often assume that it is those who stay, those who walk beside us for years, who shape us the most. And certainly, such people have great influence. But if you look closely at your life, you will likely find that your most significant turning points, the moments that altered the course of your becoming, were marked not by comfort, but by loss, not by security, but by disruption. There is a reason the psyche responds to heartbreak the way it does, because heartbreak dismantles control. It shatters the idea that we can hold tightly to what we love and keep it safe within the walls of certainty. When someone leaves, when they choose another path, when they vanish without warning, when they die before we are ready, the world stops making sense. And in that senselessness, the old identity we clung to begins to dissolve. Sorrow strips us of illusion. It does not ask permission. It moves like a fire, consuming everything that is no longer true. We are left raw, exposed, uncertain, but it is in that vulnerability that something sacred begins. The ego, rigid, defensive, armored, cannot survive the intensity of true grief, and once it collapses, the soul steps forward. Take the story of Arman, a man hardened by years of disappointment, of hiding his sensitivity behind intellect and sarcasm. Then Noor came into his life like spring after a long winter. She didn't try to fix him or change him. She simply met him with gentleness, and in that gentleness his edges began to soften. For a time he believed she had healed him. But healing does not come from another. It comes from the decision to open, and opening is dangerous. Noor chose a different road. Her departure shattered Arman, not because she had betrayed him, but because he had unknowingly built his hope upon her presence. Without her, the despair returned, but deeper this time, because now he knew what it meant to feel alive. For a year he was lost. He couldn't speak of her without crying. He walked through his days like a ghost. But in that silence something began to emerge. He picked up a journal at first, just to bleed the pain onto paper, but the words kept coming. He began writing about his grief, his confusion, his rage. He posted his reflections on a quiet blog, and slowly people began to read. They wrote to him, "You said what I couldn't say. Your pain helped me survive mine." Arman never became who he was because Noor stayed. He became who he was because Noor left. This is the alchemy of pain. It transforms what is unbearable into something meaningful. It turns endings into thresholds. And though it demands everything from us, our comfort, our assumptions, our pride, it gives back something greater, depth. Compassion, presence. Ask yourself in your own time of grief, what is this pain trying to make of me? The question is not rhetorical. Your answer is the beginning of your metamorphosis. Do not be tempted to rush through it. The world will try to distract you with remedies, new lovers, productivity, entertainment. But these are all bandages over a wound that needs to breathe. Stay with the pain. Let it speak. It may be the only part of you that has not learned how to lie. The ego will resist this process. It will whisper, "You must get over this, you must move on." But the soul does not move on. It moves inward. It seeks meaning. It searches the rubble for truth. And when it finds even the smallest seed of it, it begins to rebuild. Not the old structure, but something entirely new. That ache you feel is not weakness. It is a sign that something meaningful happened. That something was touched within you that mattered. Let that ache lead you. Let it point to the values you hold, the dreams you buried, the parts of you that were once numb and now scream to be felt. In pain, we meet the self we forgot, the self that doesn't need to impress or win or earn love, but the self that simply is, the self that remembers its worth without needing validation from anyone's presence or absence. The person who caused the pain may be gone, but they are not the only thing that remains. What they left behind is more than memory. They left behind the conditions for your awakening. They stirred the soil. Now, it is your task to grow something in it. Transformation rarely feels good. It feels like dying, because something is dying. The version of you that believed love was safety, that thought control could prevent sorrow, that imagined you could only be whole with someone else. Let that version go, let it die and mourn it properly. Then from the ashes rise, not in vengeance, not in haste, but in reverence, for the pain that broke you was also the fire that revealed you. You are not what was taken from you. You are what you choose to become in the face of that loss. And this becoming, slow and sacred, is the real love story, the one you write with your own soul. There are moments in life when a person enters our world and leaves an imprint so deep, it seems impossible to ever be the same again. Their presence is sudden, almost faded, as if orchestrated by something far more ancient than logic. They may stay only for a short while, and yet the magnitude of their impact reverberates long after they've gone. You may believe this person was meant to be your forever. You may believe that, had they stayed, you would have known lasting peace, stability, or joy. But sometimes the universe does not send a person as a companion for the journey. It sends them as a catalyst. They were never the destination. They were the detour that saved you. It is human nature to grasp tightly to what awakens us. The ego craves permanence. When we meet someone who shows us our own light, or even more painfully, our own shadow, we confuse their presence with our salvation. We think they are the source of the transformation, when in truth they are merely the trigger. What they awaken was already inside us, buried under years of adaptation, conformity, and forgotten dreams. Their role was not to complete you, but to disturb you, to call something to the surface that you had long silenced. This concept of the soul messenger appears across myth, dream, and archetype. It is the wanderer who appears just before the hero sets out on their true path. It is the fox in the dark forest, the storm on calm waters, the one who speaks riddles that seem meaningless until the journey is complete. These people enter your life and stir everything. They do not play by the rules of comfort. Their presence makes you question everything, your desires, your worth, your boundaries, your capacity for love, and then, just as suddenly, they leave, often without explanation, often just when you begin to believe in the story they've helped you write. But that is the point. They are not the story. They are the disruption that makes you write your own. Imagine a sculptor. Before they shape beauty, they must shatter the stone, the person you lost, this soul messenger. They were the hammer, the strike, the fracture, and within that fracture light poured in, not from them, but from within you. We live under the illusion that happiness lies in possession, in keeping what feels good, in holding tight to what reflects our longings. But true happiness is not dependent on any person. It is a state of alignment, and often we only find that alignment when someone misaligns our world so completely that we are forced to rebuild it from truth rather than from habit. Consider Layla, who spent years in a relationship where she dimmed her voice. She was the pleaser, the peacekeeper. She convinced herself that love meant endurance, that devotion was silent. And then came Rami. He was unlike anyone she'd known, attentive, intense, alive. For 3 months they existed in a whirlwind. He listened to her, challenged her, dared her to want more. She began to speak differently, dress differently, think differently. For the first time in her life, she considered that maybe she didn't have to shrink to be loved. And then he disappeared. She was shattered, confused, angry. She spiraled into grief, blaming herself, questioning her worth. But months later, when she stood in a room filled with people, delivering a talk about the courage to choose yourself, she realized something extraordinary. He had not taken anything from her. He had given her back to herself. His presence disrupted the lie she had built her life around. His absence forced her to embody the truth. Such people do not come to give us peace. They come to give us clarity. They are the storm that tears through the safe little town you've built, and when the sky's clear you realize the town was never home. You were meant for something more. In dreams we often encounter figures that feel familiar and yet foreign. They say things we don't fully understand. They beckon us into dark caves or onto narrow paths. These figures are the unconscious calling. They are not here to reassure. They are here to transform, and transformation, by its nature, is uncomfortable. It requires a death of the old self, a disintegration of identity. The ones who trigger this change in waking life are no different. They disrupt, they awaken, they vanish, and we are left with the task of interpretation. What did this encounter mean? What did it awaken? What is it asking me to become, this pain, the ache of their absence, is not senseless, it is sacred. It is the womb of rebirth. Every tear you shed is a baptism. Every unanswered question is an invitation. You are not broken because they left. You are becoming whole because they came. Perhaps they showed you the kind of love you never believed you deserved. Or perhaps they revealed how little you had been accepting before. Perhaps they were the mirror that reflected your highest potential. Or perhaps they were the mirror that shattered, revealing all the pieces of you that needed healing. You must understand their purpose was never permanence. Their purpose was perspective. Not every chapter is meant to go on forever. Some are short, sharp, unforgettable, like a single verse in a song that stays with you long after the melody fades. These people are not the mountaintop. They are the crack in the stone, and through that crack you catch a glimpse of gold you never knew existed. So when you say, if only they had stayed, I would have been happy, recognize that this is the voice of longing, not truth. Happiness was never about their staying. It was about what they made possible within you, what they reflected, what they disrupted, what they revealed. They were not meant to be the home. They were the earthquake that made you seek one built on truth. You may never forget them. That is not a weakness. That is a sign they touched something eternal in you. But you must not confuse their memory with your destiny. You must not build an altar to a ghost. You are not meant to chase what is gone. You are meant to honor what it taught you and walk forward with that wisdom etched into your soul. They were the storm, and now new life must grow where the old was cleared away. This is the path of transformation. It is not easy, but it is honest, and it will lead you not to another person, but to yourself. That is the destination. That has always been the destination. So, why does the universe send someone you can't stay with? Because some souls are meant to enter, stir, awaken, and then depart. Their role was never to stay. Their role was to remind you of who you are, what you deserve, and where you must go next. Their goodbye is not an ending. It is an invitation to become.